I'm Christa Orth, and I'm from Bothell, Washington. I grew up as a teenager there in the early 90s, and I grew up Catholic. So I go to church every Sunday with my parents. Because of our Catholic religion, we didn't talk about sex or sexuality, and that became a major issue for me internally when I started to discover that I was queer. And so one of the things that I did to seek queer community was to volunteer at the AIDS Foundation. My friend Terry and I were best friends, and we would take the bus down to Seattle every week in the summertime. We were probably 15 when we started volunteering at the AIDS Foundation. It was the Northwest AIDS Foundation, which is now Lifelong AIDS Alliance in Seattle. We learned that you couldn't get AIDS from kissing or from a drinking fountain or from a toilet seat, which these were major misnomers in American culture at the time. They actually showed us how to use a condom. This was how I learned how to use a condom with my partners. So on the flip side, I would go to my Catholic Sunday school, and during one of the Sunday school sessions, AIDS was the topic. And the Catholic Church mandated that the Sunday school teach us that you could get HIV and AIDS from kissing gay people. The major misinformation campaign that they were spreading in the early 90s was that, and what I heard in my Sunday school class was that latex was not a barrier for HIV, that latex was actually condoms were actually made of a porous material, that HIV could get through the pores of the material, and even sperm could get through the pores of the material. I raised my hand at Sunday school, and I was like, that's wrong. I know that latex is, that latex is not a porous material. It is an effective barrier against HIV and AIDS, and it's effective birth control. So, my Sunday school teacher was like, oh God, what am I going to do with this one? I remember that she was really embarrassed and moved on quickly, My parents were still married at that point, and then when I was 19, my parents got divorced. And, I was very concerned about both of my parents, but particularly my mom, who I knew was pretty sexually, she was pretty sheltered. And I said, Mom, you should really go get tested for all STDs, but particularly HIV and AIDS, And so she did, and she was negative and all that stuff. A few months later, she met she met a boyfriend in a support group for Catholics who were going through divorce. And, after a while, she said, I really like him so much, and I hope you don't mind me saying that we're thinking about getting intimate. I think in any other situation, I probably would have been like, TMIs, no, I don't want to hear about it. But I was concerned for her. So I said, well, Mom, I'd really like to, you should know how to use a condom. Did you ever use a condom, before? And she was like, well, a little bit, but, she was on the pill and all that stuff. So that afternoon, I went into my backpack and got a condom, and she went into the kitchen and got a banana, and we sat on the couch in the living room, and I showed her how to use a condom. Anyway, she ended up marrying her boyfriend, and they're happily married, and they're Catholic still. When I came out as queer, it was really difficult for her to reconcile, especially with her religion. And so she ended up talking to a friend of mine who I'd met at the AIDS Foundation, and my stepdad knew too. And she helped get my mom into the support group, the Catholic parent support group for people who had gay kids. And then she ended up, reviving it and taking it over and, running it for many years. We all have our journeys around gender and sexuality. And even though my my family was very hush-hush about sex and sexuality. I was able to find what I needed through the community of HIV and AIDS activists in Seattle, and then bring it back to my community too, and my family.